Hello and welcome to another episode of The Shooting Show. I'm Mark Ripley, and this week I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks to help improve your rifle shooting, especially at long range. Okay, so I think I finally found somewhere to sit and record a bit of footage for you. It's very windy this morning. It's probably about 13 mile an hour wind or so on the other side of this hill. So I've come around here out the wind, not so much from a shooting point of view, but more purely so I can record stuff without the camera going making ridiculous noises and drowning me out. I tried setting over the other side of the hill there and a load of sheep come out barring at me, so I've given up with all that. Come around here. Nice little quiet spot so we can have a little chat. Right, probably one of the most important things to long range shooting, or any type of shooting for that matter, is consistency. So it's important to find a round for your rifle, a brand of ammunition that you can consistently shoot with. Now, when I say consistently, I'm not talking about getting this absolute half-inch perfect group on your target at 100 metres or whatever. What I'm talking about is getting a consistent size group. So whether that's half inch, an inch, inch and a half, it doesn't really matter as long as it's consistent. From there you can build on that. Consistency also comes down to your shooting technique and how you're holding the rifle and your style of shooting, but we'll get into that in a minute. I think also with any type of shooting, gear is an important factor. If you've got gear that's going to let you down, be it your rifle, your scope, your ammunition, whatever that might be, then you're gonna really struggle to progress. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, we're going to have a quick look at the gear that I use and the reasons I use it. Okay, so this is basically my shooting setup. I've got a pair of laser range finding binoculars here. These are the Geovids. These are the 10x42 HDs. They're an older model now, but they're still pretty good. Very nice glass in them and accurate rangefinder. I'm also using a Kestrel wind meter. This has also got a ballistics program built into it, but we'll go into that a little bit later. Hand loaded ammunition, a rear bag. This is the tab gear rear bag. They're really handy, and for the sake of 20 or 30 quid, well worth buying. You'll also notice I've got a camcorder here. This is a Panasonic HC-V510, I believe it is. That's a very good camcorder for filming long range shots. The reason I use that is it makes it a lot easier to spot your misses, so you can see where your shots are landing. Sometimes you can lose your sight picture on the target when you're shooting, especially at closer ranges. So that's quite handy. Just it acts as a kind of a spotter for you. Okay, over to the rifle itself. This is a custom rifle. It's a 260 Remington. So it's firing a 6.5 bullet. I'm using 143 grain hand loaded ammunition. It's quite a heavy rifle, but heavy's a good thing when it comes to long range shooting because it soaks up the recoil and helps you stay on target a bit easier. You'll notice I've got a good quality bipod on there. This is the Atlas bipod, which is it's not a cheap bipod, but it's a good quality sturdy bipod. It quickly and easily adjusts. The scope is an Element Nexus. This is a 5-20x50 first focal plane, so it's a variable magnification scope. It's got dialable turrets on there with a zero stop as well. Very well built scope. It's a great scope for this sort of thing, very high quality, and it's not a high price tag for what it is, not compared to some of the other brands. Now, if budget is a bit of an issue, then there's a model below this one which is the Titan, and that offers an exceptional value for money. Very good scope that. You'll also notice I'm using decent quality scope mount here. This is a sports match mount. It's a one-piece mount, very sturdy. You can see it's got 3 screws in each side of the mount there, so it gives a good solid grip on the scope. I've never had any problems with that. That's sat on a 20 MOA base rail. You'll also notice on here I've got an anti-cant device. This is a little bubble level just to stop you tipping the rifle left or right as you're shooting. So that's pretty much the gear that I'm using. I've also got a T12 Scout moderator on there from JMS Sporting, which is a good quality moderator. Dual trigger as well, I forgot to mention. That's set at about 1.5 pound. So very, very light, but that again helps for long range shooting. So all in all, that's the rifle setup and the gear that I use. Let's have a little look and see how that all comes together. Okay, so firstly, let's have a little look at using the rear bag and what the point of it is. Right, so basically what this bag is for is to enable you to support the rear of the rifle. So in other words, when the rifle's here, like so, that will tuck underneath the rear of the stock, and that will support the rear of the stock, and by squeezing the bag, raise the rifle slightly, and by relaxing you lower it slightly, so you can hold steady on your target, and then by squeezing it or releasing it, you'll move your crosshair up or down, and then when you get it where you want it, you maintain that pressure and that hold the rifle dead steady. And also what that does is when the rifle recoils, it recoils straight back into your shoulder rather than off at an angle, because you're supporting the rear of that and you're creating like a V in the top of this bag. Now these bags are quite well designed because there's 2 straps on them, one going that way and one going that way. The idea being that you put your hand through and you can then hold it that way if that's the height you need, or if you need it a bit taller you can turn it round, put your hand in that way, and it gives you again a good solid rest. So for about 30 quid, if you can get used to using one of these, they really are much better for shooting long distance and when you're shooting off a bipod. So I would highly recommend one of them. Okay, second tip, when you're shooting, what we're going to do is when you're using the bipod, we're going to do what we call load the bipod. Now what that means is, it means you actually lean slightly into the bipod. You can see it just moving forward and flexing there. So not vast amounts of pressure, but you just, basically what I tend to do is sort of push myself up tight to the rifle and then sink down, and that will then lean into it. Really the key to it again comes back to consistency, and it's all about maintaining or doing the same thing repetitively. So if you just kind of get a feel for how much you need to, how much pressure you would be putting on it, and as long as you do that each time, then your shots remain consistent. So again, all we're going to do is just lean into the bipod and kind of sink down into it with it digging into the ground a little bit. So that will help take some of the skip out the rifle when you fire. Another tip as well is to keep the bipod as low to the ground as you can. Basically, the closer you are to the ground, the more stable you're going to be. So what you don't really want to have is a very tall bipod and then be using it so that you're kind of up here like this trying to shoot, because that again won't help with your accuracy or your consistency. Okay, so I've put a target out, which is basically just a little pile of chalk about probably 8 to 10 inches square all round, out on the ploughed field out there. Now the reason I put it on a ploughed field is firstly because it'll give a good safe backstop for any rounds that miss the target, and also because it gives a good sort of splash, if you will, when the bullet hits the ground, so it makes a visible sign that you can see. Now that target is out at, that's out at 440 metres, so around about 485 yards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the information into the Kestrel of the distance and the wind, and we'll see what predictions we get. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the range in. So 440 metres, I'm working in metres here. Right, so I've entered that, and that gives me a correction of 8 MOA. Right, so as far as windage goes, I've got wind coming in from the right to the left, which I know is around about 13 mile an hour. Now, I got that firstly from the Kestrel, taking a wind reading, and also I confirmed that on the Met Office of all places. On there it showed a wind speed of 13 to 14 mile an hour. So I've got a pretty good idea what the wind's doing, and it seems fairly consistent. So I'm going to base my shots on a 13 mile an hour wind coming directly from the right. So I'm going to put in there 13 mile an hour for the wind, and for the direction is coming from 3 o'clock. So basically what we do is we treat the target, wherever that might be, always at 12 o'clock. So if I have a wind that's coming in directly from the right, then that would be 3 o'clock. It's coming from behind me, 6 o'clock. Coming from my left, 9 o'clock. So that's basically how what we call the clock system of wind works. Okay, so we're going to enter that as a 3 o'clock wind because it's coming from my right, and that gives me a correction of 3.5 MOA. So we'll put that in and take a shot and see what happens. Okay, so 8 MOA for elevation is there, and then the windage, we're going to go 325 I think for that. So we're going to go right, turn that to 325. Notice in this clip the swirl in the air behind the bullet as it curves into the target. So determining wind direction is probably the easiest of things to do. The simplest one, and one that I tend to do, is just get some grass and just drop it, and you can see which way that grass is falling. That tells you the wind's coming from that way. You can do the same thing if it's a very still day. A good little trip is to buy, as I've got in my little rifle case here, party bubbers. So you can buy these from Tesco's or somewhere, and you can sit on the hill like a nutcase blowing bubbles. As long as no one sees you, it doesn't matter. But that will tell you exactly what the wind's doing on a very still day. So if you're talking sort of 2 to 3 mile an hour winds, you can see exactly what it's doing. You can watch those bubbles float off down the valley or whatever. So that's another little trick. You can use bits of wool that are caught on fences and stuff, acts as a good wind indicator. Maybe tiny little bits of tissue or something. Anything like that, anything that's going to flow on the wind, feather, anything like that will give you a good indication of which way the wind's going. You can also look downrange, see which way grass or crops are leaning over, leaves on trees, ripples on ponds, lakes, water, anything like that. Smoke, if you've got a bonfire on the farm or something, or there's a chimney in the distance or something, you can see which way that's going. Clouds even. All sorts of different things will show you which way the wind is going, not necessarily where you are, because that's quite easy, you can feel it on your face very often, but more downrange. This next clip is a steel fox target at 660 yards with the same 13 mile an hour crosswind. Notice how the debris from the impact drift on the wind. In calmer wind conditions, it's possible to be extremely precise with long range shot placement, as you can see in these next few clips. Watch for the bullet trace on this one coming in from the top of the screen. Okay, so that's about it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it and picked up a few little tips, and until next week, stay safe and shoot straight.